Classic 102.4. Bach the Night Away. Classic 102.4. We got beat up in school, too. I am Francine Favre, and you are listening to Classic 102.4. Keep it tuned to Classic 102.4. Please? This next piece is a hit with our longtime listeners. You're listening to Classic 102.4. Don't go away. I have plenty more for you here on Classic 102.4. This is Francine Favre, and you're listening to the most respected station in Stillwater, Classic 102.4. Don't touch that dial. Your favorite composers are on the way. Francine Favre asking you to please stay with us. It's so lonely. I know exactly what you want to hear, and it's coming up next on Classic 102.4. More of your favorites next on Classic 102.4. More of the great composers next on Classic 102.4. The first movement of Mozart's Symphony No. 40 next on Classic 102.4. Back by popular demand, the first movement of Mozart's Symphony No. 40. You're tuned to Classic 102.4. The first movement of Symphony No. 40 is much like myself, molto allegro. Symphony No. 40, someone like Johnny Gatt could never grasp its beauty. Next, we have one of my favorite musical pieces, Tchaikovsky's Sleeping Beauty Waltz on Classic 102.4. For your listening pleasure, Sleeping Beauty Waltz from Pyotr Tchaikovsky on Classic 102.4. The Sleeping Beauty premiered in 1890 in St. Petersburg and is hailed as one of Tchaikovsky's finest works. That was the Sleeping Beauty Waltz on Classic 102.4. Shh. Next on Classic 102.4, a treat for all you Handel fans out there. Water Music Suite No. 1 in F major. Enjoy! This is Francine, and you're listening to Handel's Water Music Suite No. 1 in F major here on Classic 102.4. Water Music, composed by Frederick Handel, was first performed for King George I at a concert on the Thames River. That was the first suite from Handel's Water Music. Please stay with us here on Classic 102.4. Next up, the overture for Handel's Water Music Suite No. 1 in F major. This is Classic 102.4. And now, something you've all been waiting patiently for, the overture to Handel's Water Music Suite No. 1 in F major, here on Classic 102.4. Legend has it Handel had fallen out of favor with King George I and wrote water music to get back in the king's good graces. Handel? He's so hot right now, Handel. I do hope you enjoy this next piece, Anitra's Dance, the third movement from Grieg's Peer Gynt Suite No. 1. Next, we have Anitra's Dance from Grieg's Peer Gynt Suite No. 1 on Classic 102.4. Oh, Peer Gynt! He flew too close to the sun when he tried to seduce poor Anitra. Gynt winds up thwarted in his attempt to seduce little Anitra, much like I was with my neighbor. Francine Favre here, ready to play the Christine to your Phantom. Toccata and Fugue in D minor here on Classic 102.4. Putting the goth in Gothic, it's Bach's Toccata and Fugue in D minor next on Classic 102.4. One of my all-time favorite first date songs. You're tuned into Classic 102.4. I often enjoy playing that piece in my home late at night. It really livens the place up. Part of Bach's harpsichord concertos, Concerto No. 4 in A major here on Classic 102.4. If you love the harpsichord as much as I do, you're in for a treat. Bach's Concerto No. 4 on Classic 102.4. The underappreciated harpsichord. How I adore you. The concerto, composed somewhere around 1738, consists of three movements, Allegro, Larghetto, and my personal favorite, Allegro ma non tanto. Next for you on Classic 102.4, we have the fourth movement from Beethoven's Symphony No. 5 in C minor. Enjoy! Most prefer the first movement of Beethoven's Fifth. I prefer the fourth. I'm just that way. It may not be as recognizable as its older brother, but it sure is great. I won't allow the fourth movement to stand in the shadows of the first movement any longer. You're listening to Classic 102.4. It's a real treat to deliver this next piece to you. Ladies and gentlemen, Beethoven's Fifth on Classic 102.4. Life would not be the same without this piece. The first movement from Beethoven's Fifth, right here on Classic 102.4. Quite possibly the most famous piece of music in the world. This is Classic 102.4 with your host, Francine Favre. You just heard the first movement to Beethoven's Fifth. Plenty more on the way. Stay tuned. Are you ready to Bach Stillwater? Brandenburg Concerto No. 3 on Classic 102.4. It's not just any Concerto No. 3. It's the Brandenburg Concerto No. 3. Next on Classic 102.4. Bach sired 20 children during his lifetime. Something I certainly would not like to emulate. Whenever I hear that piece, I always wish I was wearing my favorite powdered wig and bustier. You're listening to Classic 102.4. You're listening to Classic 102.4 and Brahms' Hungarian Dance No. 5. I've been working on an interpretive dance for this next piece for some time. It's really becoming quite something. Brahms' Hungarian Dance No. 5 on Classic 102.4. No wonder they've got so much to dance about. They're Hungarian. Dance, everyone! Dance! Classic 102.4. Up next, I'm treating you to a little more Mozart. Eine kleine Nachtmusik here on Classic 102.4. Eine kleine Nachtmusik. Gesundheit! A mysterious piece of music by Mozart. It's never been firmly established why or for whom he composed Eine kleine Nachtmusik. One of the most beloved operas, here is the overture from Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, next on Classic 102.4. You want an overture? I'll give you an overture. Mozart's Marriage of Figaro, next on Classic 102.4. Apparently, that song was a hit with our fans. We received a Classic FM record 3 calls during it. Poor Figaro. I can relate. This is Francine Favre, and you're listening to Handel's music for the Royal Fireworks on Classic 102.4. Our next piece was written for royalty, and because of that, I'm dedicating it to our dear Chief of Police, Troy Bradshaw. Handel's music for the Royal Fireworks. Music for the Royal Fireworks was written by Handel in celebration of the end of the War of Austrian Succession. Hooray! I can picture the fireworks, and they are marvelous. We're sneaking into the Hall of the Mountain King with Edvard Grieg, next on Classic 102.4. And now, let's tiptoe with Peer Gynt into the Hall of the Mountain King. You're listening to Classic 102.4. A piece that I'm sure was familiar to many, that was the fourth movement from Grieg's Peer Gynt Suite No. 1 in the Hall of the Mountain King. One of the pivotal moments of Peer Gynt in the Hall of the Mountain King. You're listening to Classic 102.4. Next for you on Classic 102.4, the Coppelia Ballet Suite, Act 1, No. 1, from composer Leo Delibes. And now, we are going to play Leo Delibes' Coppelia Ballet Suite, Act 1, No. 1. This is Francine Favre, and you're listening to Classic 102.4. The story of Coppelia involves a mad doctor who has created a life-size dancing doll. If only. Delibes, who studied composition in Paris, achieved great fame with the publishing of the ballet Coppelia in 1870. Stay tuned. You're listening to Classic 102.4. This next song I dedicate to my dearest Gregory. Why won't you return my calls? Moonlight Sonata on Classic 102.4. Turn off the lights and grab a box of tissues. Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata next on Classic 102.4. It seems only Beethoven knows the pain that lives within my heart. You're listening to Classic 102.4. It's just so sad. You're listening to Classic 102.4. Slip on your point shoes. It's Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite, next on Classic 102.4. Cross your legs, gentlemen. The Nutcracker Suite is up next on Classic 102.4. I still have nightmares about that giant nutcracker coming to life and trying to eat me. My therapist says I shouldn't tell people about that. That song brings up such vivid Christmas memories. Classic 102.4. From the Oratorio Solomon, here is Handel's The Arrival of the Queen of Sheba. It is the third act from Handel's Solomon, The Arrival of the Queen of Sheba. Handel composed that piece back in 1748. That music has existed for over 250 years. Amazing. A legend in his own right, Handel would also eventually influence the works of both Mozart and Beethoven. I'm Francine Favre, and you're listening to Classic 102.4. I like to blare this next song from my boombox as I ride my bike to the station. Ride of the Valkyries on Classic 102.4. Grab your buffers and strap on your helmets. Ride of the Valkyries on Classic 102.4. I love the smell of napalm in the morning. You're listening to Classic 102.4. I've heard rumors that members of the Brotherhood play that as they ride into battle. I fully intend this next piece to be played at my wedding. Someday. This is the first movement from Mozart's Hofner Serenade. This next piece was performed in July of 1776. Not much else happened that month, I believe. Here is the first movement of Mozart's Hofner Serenade. That was Mozart's Hofner Serenade No. 7 in D major, and I'm Francine Favre. You just heard the first movement from Mozart's Hofner Serenade. Stay with us here on Classic 102.4. Springtime is upon us. The birds celebrate her return with festive song. Vivaldi's The Spring on Classic 102.4. Grab your favorite smoking pipe and a comfortable wing-backed chair. It's Vivaldi's Four Seasons No. 1, The Spring, on Classic 102.4. Ah, spring, full of new life and love. For some, at least. I defy anyone to listen to that piece and not feel invigorated. Next, a little night music for you. Mozart's Serenade No. 13 for strings in G major on Classic 102.4. I know you've been waiting for this, the second movement of Mozart's String Quartet in G major. You can thank me later. Mozart continues to astound me every day. The second movement of his string quartet in G major next on Classic 102.4. That piece is part of Mozart's Haydn Quartets, first published in Vienna in 1785. The second movement of Mozart's string quartet in G major. I'm Francine Favre, and you're listening to Classic 102.4. Here's something I'm sure you wouldn't mind hearing again. Vivaldi's second concerto from Four Seasons, better known as The Summer. It's always summertime when you have the second concerto to Vivaldi's Four Seasons, next on Classic 102.4. Nothing compares to listening to that piece with your betrothed on a warm summer night. Or so I've been told. Nothing like a little Vivaldi's The Summer to go with this heat wave we've been experiencing. Her voice is music to my ears. Jane Valderrama with a Channel 6 News update. Now we're going to swing by the Channel 6 News desk for an update from Jane Valderrama. We have a Channel 6 breaking news report from Jane Valderrama. We now take you to Jane Valderrama for an update on the goings-on about Stillwater. Time for a Channel 6 News update from our favorite, Jane Valderrama.